He's prepared to testify that President Trump, as a candidate, Donald Trump, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said at this point. As well, we're told that Flynn made the decision to cooperate only in the last 24 hours, that he is distraught about the decision but feels he's doing the right thing for his country.
Welcome back to America Talks Live. I'm Miranda Kahn. You just heard ABC News reporter Brian Ross say that Michael Flynn agreed to testify that President Trump directed him to make contact with Russian officials during the 2016 presidential election. That was reportedly part of Flynn's plea deal with special counsel Robert Mueller. Trump's former national security advisor pled guilty earlier today to making false statements to the FBI about his conversations with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. The White House says the plea deal clears the way for a quick and reasonable end to the Russia probe. He's the second former senior aide to be charged now in Mueller's investigation, and that's where we want to welcome in our political panel. Joining us now, we have political commentator and Newsmax columnist Clarence McKee. Always good to see you. Clarence has also held several positions in the Reagan administration. So many, in fact, we can't even name them all, Clarence. There's just so many. We're also pleased to have with us conservative activist and Newsmax columnist as well, Julio Rivera. Julio is also the editorial director at the Reactionary Times. Good to see you again, Julio.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing well. Just another slow news day. Not much to talk about. We'll try to find something. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's talk about Flynn. Julio, does Flynn's guilty plea suggest anything to you? We heard from that ABC News reporter make it sound as if Flynn has got the goods on the president, or at least someone within the White House, someone close to the president. What does this verdict mean to you, or this plea mean to you? Is what I mean.
Well, I look at it like this, right? Flynn was in business for himself. Flynn Intel Group. He received payments from Turkey. Took payments from RT America. He took payments from Kaspersky Labs, which I've written about at length for Newsmax previously. Listen. He had been previously vetted by the Obama administration. They granted him a security clearance. I obviously, if they can go back in time now, they probably wouldn't have made the choice to choose him. But I think Trump, to a certain extent, is a bit isolated from it. I think some of the people who were helping him make those decisions at the very beginning, a lot of those people aren't around anymore, and they're not around with good reason. So, it doesn't really suggest to me anything other than, Flynn lied and he's being punished for lying, and rightly so, because we have to respect the rule of law.
I want to go bring up something that our first guest, Michael Reagan, said, Clarence, and he said, this doesn't mean anything. It just means that he lied. But the big question is, why? Why did he lie about this meeting?
Well, first of all, the media and the Democrats are frothing at the mouth over this, trying to blow the whole tax game off the front pages because of Flynn. First of all, Flynn really made some bad mistakes and bad judgment. Just throw away his whole career here. But it's one count.
This is a highly decorated general.
Exactly. 33 years. I don't know what he's thinking about. But, this is an indictment, not an indictment, but he's pleading guilty to lying, not to a conspiracy, not to collusion. And who else is he going to name? We'll see what happens. I don't know what shoes are going to drop, but everyone's hoping he's going to go up to the tree. When you really think about it, one count, so I don't know what he's giving up in return. Is he going up the ladder? How far can he go? The president and his family, we'll see. But it's not this big earthquake that people were hoping to get out of the first indictment.
So you think the mainstream media is just taking this
out of proportion? Let's see what happens.
Okay, Julio, do you agree with that? Do you think the mainstream media is just blowing this out of proportion, and this is really no big deal?
Oh, yeah. Expect this to be in the news cycle now for weeks to come, and there's going to be speculation that he's going to drop dimes that probably don't even exist, on other upper level administration members, maybe going all the way up to Trump. I wouldn't necessarily expect it. I think that if there were any smoking guns, I think we would have been already well aware of it. Look how much time has been wasted up to this point, and all they've drawn out is possible tax evasion, if it even qualifies as tax evasion, on Manafort and obviously the indictment that we see today, or the guilty plea rather.
Yeah, I want to ask you, and I'll get to what you were getting ready to say, but I want to ask you to what Michael Reagan brought up though earlier. If it wasn't a big deal to meet with this Russian ambassador, there's nothing against it, why did he lie about it? Why did he mislead the vice president? Why wasn't he honest even with his own campaign team? Not only is he admitting to lying to the FBI, Julio, but he wasn't even completely forthcoming when it came to the president and the vice president. Why?
I don't know. I mean, he could have been involved in the culture of lawlessness from the previous administration, and he just probably thought that that was par for the course. I mean, I don't know what the rules are necessarily, because I'm not an upper level person in D.C. and what rules they play by, but apparently he thought that it was okay to do that. It was a big mistake. You know, obviously he's going to, be punished for it now, and rightly so.
Unless he was trying to cover up something that he thought may have been improper with some of the clients. He was getting, what, $500,000 from one client.
Right, and he didn't put that information.
And, you know, they didn't go
release that right away.
And they didn't go after him for it either.
Right. I'm sorry, Julio, you were going to say?
No, I'm saying he was in business for himself previously, and who knows what the nature of those dealings were, what the reasons he would have been, taking money. You know, obviously they said that he just gave a speech, I believe it was, on behalf of Kaspersky, and they paid him for a speech. But if he was going to be the incoming national security advisor, knowing, what a company like Kaspersky, which had been proven to have been able to hack an NSA contractor's computer, yeah, it does open the Pandora's box for more questions, obviously.
Clarence is someone who had several positions, again, with the Reagan administration. If you're with the Trump administration right now, Trump's team, or even if you're a Republican desperately trying to get tax reform through, and this is going on all over the mainstream media, are you freaking out right now?
I'd be very upset. Well, I think tonight when they pass this tax bill, I think this will play backstage. But when you get people like Brian Ross, who's had some truth issues in the past on some of his reporting, they're going to keep going until they can find something and throwing all these things out. I'd be very upset that this taking our big tax push off the front pages, but you expect that. You expect it.
Julio, do you think that's what's going to happen? Because, again, the Senate's expected to vote on that tax reform bill today. A word is that they have enough votes to make that happen. Do you think if that happens that this Flynn plea is just going to kind of go by the wayside and be, at the end of the line, I guess, if you will, the back page of the newspaper?
No, I mean, I think that the mainstream media is going to push this hard and fast for as long as they can possibly get away with it. Just because they're going to try to tie it back to Trump. But I mean, I think regardless of what's going on here with Flynn or however the media tries to spin it, these congressmen and senators have a job to do. And right now, that job, first and foremost, before the end of this legislative session at the end of this year, is to pass tax reform. Otherwise, they are going to have a disastrous midterm election.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees with that. All right, I want to talk about another legal case that is making headlines. We mentioned this earlier in the show. Of course, we're talking about Kate Steinle. Reaction just pouring in from all over after a jury found an illegal immigrant not guilty of killing her. This happened back in 2015. Prosecutors argue that Garcia Zarate intentionally fired a gun, killing Steinle, while the defense said that it was an accidental shooting. Zarate had been deported 5 times. He was supposed to be sent back to Mexico for a 6th time at the time of Steinle's death, but the sheriff's office refused to notify ICE and then released him. But a judge ruled that information couldn't be presented to jurors because it had no bearing on this particular case. You may recall Steinle and her father, they were walking on a pier in San Francisco when she was shot and killed. The president has mentioned this case quite a bit during the campaign trail, and today was no different. He immediately responded to Twitter by calling it disgraceful, saying that Jose Zarate was a 7-time convicted felon who kept coming back over the weakly protected Obama border. So we're going to get your reaction to this case, what this means for sanctuary cities, coming up next here on America Talks Live. Also, we're going to be talking about Colin Kaepernick as well. He has just received another award. We want you, our viewers, to weigh in on this. Do you think he deserves it? Give us a call now at 1-877-Newsmax. And welcome back to America Talks Live. Before the break, we talked about a jury acquitting Jose Zarate of that 2015 shooting death of Kate Steinle. That's where we're going to welcome back our political panel. Joining us once again, we have Clarence McKee and Julio Rivera. Thank you, gentlemen, for sticking around. I'm going to slide back over so I don't look so far away from you, Clarence.
Oh, okay.
I'm not scared of you. All right. As I mentioned on a serious note, this is stirring up a very heated debate on both sides of this issue when it comes to sanctuary cities. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the sheriff's office had this man in custody, didn't release him to federal authorities, where federal authorities are going to deport them. This is something that the family apparently tried to sue the city for doing that, and a federal judge threw it out. So my question to you, Julio, ultimately, will this ruling change anything?
What I hope it changes is I hope it changes immigration moderates to come over, to our side, the people that have a more hardline approach on immigration. Because, listen, we just elected in the last election in New Jersey, Phil Murphy, who wants to make New Jersey a sanctuary state. We see Jerry Brown and his whacked out ideas of making California a sanctuary state. We see what the end result of it is. I mean, first of all, on the verdict itself, I mean, they could have gotten criminally negligent homicide, involuntary manslaughter. There was a slew of charges that they could have came back with against this. But the one thing I would say, to the father of Kate Steinle, who unfortunately, I can't think of something worse to have to endure as a father of daughters myself. Hopefully her death will bring about that awareness that the way that we've been handling this situation for so long has been incorrect, and that other cases like this can happen. I mean, this isn't, a random person falling through the cracks. This is somebody who was deported 5 times, who committed, I believe, a total of 7 felonies, who was in custody, and then was free to commit this atrocity. So, I mean, it's really, really, really difficult.
Well, and one of the things that I mentioned earlier is for people that are watching right now that may not have been following this case, his legal status was not allowed to be permitted. So the jurors weren't aware of that. They weren't aware that he had 7 felony charges. None of that was included. Do you think that was the right decision?
Well, I'm sure for the judge, yes. But that's not the point. The point is, this was a great victory for liberal Democrats and the open border crowd. It was a disaster for the United States. It's an open invitation to any illegal criminals. Let's run to San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi's hometown. It was a disaster, and it's very bad. This is one reason Donald Trump won the election. Attitudes like this. They're in another world out there, and when they say, American citizens, their rights, the Steinle family rights, don't count. This guy, unanimous verdict, not even a...
But a lot of people have argued, going back to some of the charges that you're bringing up, and I don't want to go too off track because what's done is done, but a lot of people have argued, Julio, that maybe the prosecutor didn't bring up the right charges, that he couldn't prove that there was intent because the bullet ricocheted. And maybe that was his mistake. As someone put it, maybe the prosecutor was being a little too greedy with his charges. Do you agree with that assessment?
I mean, that could be. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the prosecutor's head. I don't know if maybe they intentionally bit off more than they can chew in order to bring out a favorable, result for, the open borders crowd, as, Clarence speculated. But I mean, I look at it like this, regardless of any of that, I think that the American people can take a look at what actually occurred here and hopefully make a new conclusion that it's time. And it's not about building the border wall necessarily. That's a massive infrastructure project, which I think still needs to be done. It's about enforcing the rule of law and the laws that are already in the books. I mean, this guy should not have been here. This should not have happened.
Well, let's talk about this, because the president is using this now to drum up support again for the wall. How does this, because remember, there was that report that supposedly the president had reached some kind of DACA agreement with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Does that work for or against Democrats right now in light of this case that, again, is making national headlines? Clarence?
I don't see how the Democrats can come up here and look like they're soft on illegal immigration in the light of this verdict. I'm sure when they do the studies and surveys and polls, you have already 90% of the people will be against that verdict. A San Francisco verdict. It was just a disgrace. And people of San Francisco should be ashamed. Their families are out there, and you never know when the next thug is going to come along. and shoot them, beat them. And it's okay by the county and city officials out there. They don't mind it, as long as it's not their families getting hurt.
Well, we're hearing reports that he actually may be deported and that the Department of Justice may file federal charges against him. So we'll, of course, continue to follow the story. Clarence, Julio, don't go away. We still have more to discuss right after the break. When we come back, Bill O'Reilly's stark warning for the president if the GOP's tax reform bill passes, which is looking more and more likely that is going to happen as early as this evening. We're going to talk about that with our panel right after the break.